You are lying in a wheat field in Maryland. The wheat was shoulder high this morning. Now it is cut down to stubble, flat in every direction, by nothing but lead. A man you have known since you were 6 years old is 20 feet away. He is calling your name. You cannot get to him yet. To stand up in this field is to die in it. This is the morning that will be remembered as the bloodiest single day in American history. And this is the story of how a farm boy from Ohio ended up in that wheat. Level 1. The Volunteer, 1861. You are 18 years old. It is the spring of 1861. You have never been more than 40 miles from the farm. Then the news comes up the road from town. The southern states have left the Union. They have fired on a federal fort called Sumter. The president, a tall, plain man from Illinois named Lincoln, calls for 75,000 volunteers. 90 days, they say. The whole thing will be over in 90 days. Every young man in the county believes it. You walk into town with your neighbor, Samuel Pratt. You have known him your whole life. His farm borders yours. You sign the same enlistment book on the same afternoon, same regiment, same company. The recruiting sergeant looks at your hands, farm hands strong, and says, "You will do." That is the whole examination. You are now a private in the Army of the United States. You think you will be home for the harvest. You will not see the next 3 harvests. Level 2. The Recruit.camp, 1861. They send you to a camp outside Washington. Here is what a private is. A private is a body that marches, digs, and stands where it is told. He carries everything he owns on his back. He owns almost nothing. You are issued a uniform of Union blue, a woolsack coat, a forage cap, and a rifle. The Springfield rifle musket, 58 caliber, muzzle loaded, 9 steps to load and fire. And you will drill those 9 steps until your hands can do them in your sleep. Because one day your life will depend on doing them while men are screaming. Your drill sergeant is named Burke, an older man. He fought in Mexico 15 years ago. He is the only man in the regiment who has ever actually seen a battle. The recruits treat the war like a celebration. Burke does not. On the 3rd day, your company tries to form a firing line and dissolves into a confused mob. Burke does not shout. Burke says, quietly, "You think this is a parade. Out there, the time it takes you to find your place in the line is the time it takes a man across the field to put a ball through your chest. Form the line. Again." You form it again. And again. By the end of the month, your company can go from a marching column to a 2-rank firing line in under a minute. Burke watches once, says nothing, and just nods. From Burke, a nod is a medal. Level 3. The Soldier. First Battle, 1861. Your first battle is at a creek in Virginia called Bull Run. It is July. It is the first real battle of the war. Civilians have driven out from Washington in carriages to watch it with picnic baskets, like it is a horse race. It is not a horse race. Here is what nobody told you about battle. The noise. The noise is a physical thing. 1,000 rifles. And the cannon. And the screaming. Combine into a wall of sound that presses on your chest. And the smoke. Within minutes, you cannot see the enemy. You load and you fire into a gray cloud, and you do not know if you have hit anything or anyone. The battle turns. The Union line breaks. The army that was going to win the war in 90 days runs back up the road, through the picnicking civilians, all the way to Washington. You run too. You are not ashamed of it later, because everyone ran. That night, soaked and shaking, you find Samuel. He is alive. You sit in the mud and neither of you says anything for an hour. Then Burke finds the 2 of you. He says the thing you will carry the entire war. The ones who live today are not braver than the ones who did not. They were just luckier. Do not ever mistake the one for the other. The day you think you survived because you are better than the dead man, that is the day you get careless. And careless is how you join him. 90 days come and go. You are still in the Army. Level 4, the Corporal. Antietam, 1862. A year passes. A year of marching. Of camp disease that kills more men than bullets. Of small fights and long boredom. You are made a corporal. Here is why. Your sergeant watched you at a skirmish on the Virginia Peninsula. While other men fired wild into the smoke, you waited, aimed, and kept your 4 nearest men firing in order instead of in panic. 2 stripes. A corporal leads the smallest piece of the army, a handful of men in the line, the lowest rung of command, but it is command. Then comes September 17th, 1862. A creek in Maryland called Antietam. You do not know the name will become the bloodiest single day in all of American history. 23,000 men killed, wounded, or missing in one day. More Americans than will fall on D-Day 82 years later. Your regiment is ordered across a 40-acre field of standing wheat toward a line of Confederate soldiers at the far fence. The 2 lines open fire at 80 yards ahead. The wheat falls, not from wind, from lead clipping the stalks. The whole field is mowed down to your knees in minutes, and men are falling with it. You keep your men firing. Load. Aim. Fire. The 9 steps Burke beat into you, now done with hands that do not shake, because there is no room left for shaking. Then Samuel goes down on your right. He is 20 feet away, in the cut wheat, calling your name, and you cannot reach him. To stand is to die. You crawl. You crawl through the stubble with lead snapping over your back, and you reach him, and you drag him by his collar to the low cover of a fence line. And a surgeon steward gets a tourniquet on his leg. He lives. The leg lives. That night, Burke finds you. He looks at the blood on your sleeves, not yours. And he says, "That was either the bravest thing I saw today or the dumbest. Out here, they are usually the same thing." It is the closest Burke ever comes to saying he is proud of you. Level 5. The Sergeant, Gettysburg, 1863. You are made a sergeant. Here is what a sergeant is in this army. The officers give the orders. The sergeant makes the line obey them under fire. He stands behind the rank, and when the line wavers, he is the man who steadies it. With his voice, his presence, and sometimes his hands. If the sergeant breaks, the line breaks. July 1863. A small town in Pennsylvania called Gettysburg. 3 days, the largest battle ever fought on the American continent. On the 2nd day, your regiment is sent to the far left of the Union line, to a rocky hill, to hold ground that cannot be given up. Because if the end of the line folds, the whole army can be rolled up like a carpet. The Confederates come up that hill again and again. You lose count. Your men are down to their last cartridges. The order comes down from your colonel, a former college professor, that there is no more ammunition and no choice left. Fix bayonets. You repeat it down the line in the voice Burke taught you. Steady, certain, a voice that does not allow a man to believe it might fail. And the line, your line, charges down the hill into the enemy instead of waiting to be overrun. It works. The left holds. The army holds. You do not know yet that this hill will be in every history book in the country. You only know that Samuel is still beside you at the end of it, breathing hard, alive. And that your voice held when it had to. But Burke is not at the bottom of the hill. Burke, who fought in Mexico, who survived Bull Run and Antietam and 100 skirmishes, Burke is in the rocks halfway up. The man who taught you that the living were never braver than the dead, just luckier. His luck ran out on the 2nd day at Gettysburg. You carry his words the rest of the war. You start saying them to the new men. Level 6. The First Sergeant. The Long War. 1864. You are made First Sergeant. The senior enlisted man of the entire company. The top of the ladder a man who enlisted as a farm boy can climb. You run the company's daily life, roll call, rations, discipline. You are the bridge between the officers and the men. The officers decide. You make it real. And the company you run is barely the same company. The men who signed the book with you in 1861 are mostly gone, dead, discharged for wounds, or in graves with no markers across 3 states. The new men are 18 the way you were 18, green the way you were green. You teach them the 9 steps. You teach them to form the line. You teach them Burke's rule, though you never tell them it was Burke's. You let them think it is just the truth, which it is. This is the year the war becomes a different thing. Under a new general, a quiet, relentless man named Grant, the army stops retreating to lick its wounds after each battle. It just keeps moving. The Wilderness, Spotsylvania, Cold Harbor, battle after battle with no pause between. The cost is beyond anything the early war imagined, but the army does not turn around anymore. You are 21 years old. You have been at war for 3 years. Your hands are steady and your sleep is not. One night, a new private, no older than you were at Sumter, asks you if it is true you carried a man out of the wheat at Antietam. You say, "Who told you that?" He says, "Everybody knows it." You do not answer. But Samuel, now a sergeant himself, in the same company, answers for you from across the fire. He says, "It is true. I am the man." Level 7, the lieutenant, 1864 to 1865. Your colonel offers you a commission. A battlefield commission, earned, not bought, which in this army means everything. You become a lieutenant. You cross the line that divides the army. You are an officer now. Here is what changes. As a first sergeant, you were responsible for the company's bodies, fed, formed, and in the line. As a lieutenant, you are responsible for its lives. You do not just hold the line now. You decide where it goes, which field it crosses, which fence it takes. Every order you give is a calculation that some of these men may not survive your being right, and more will not survive your being wrong. You learn what the officers always knew and never said, that the rank gets quieter and lonelier the higher you climb. A private has friends. A lieutenant has responsibilities wearing the faces of his friends. By the spring of 1865, the Confederate Army is starving and surrounded. You march with Grant's army toward a small Virginia courthouse town called Appomattox. And then, on April 9th, 1865, it simply stops. Word comes down the line that General Lee has surrendered to General Grant in a private home in the village. There is no great cheer. Some men weep. Most just sit down where they are standing. 4 years. You and Samuel sit on a fence rail and look at an army you do not have to fight tomorrow. He has a limp from Antietam he will carry his whole life. You have a rank you never imagined and a list of names in your head longer than you can stand to count. Samuel says, "We can go home." You realize you have almost forgotten what the word means. Level 8, home, Ohio, 1865. You go home to Ohio. The farm is exactly where you left it. The fence you mended in the spring of 1861 still needs mending. That is the strangest part. The war split the entire nation in half, killed more Americans than every other war combined will for the next century, and the fence still just needs mending. You take off the blue uniform. You put on farm clothes. Your hands remember the plow before your mind does. You do not talk about the war. The people who were not there cannot understand it, and the people who were there do not need to hear it. But every September, when the wheat is high and ready to cut, you stop at the edge of the field before the first swing of the scythe. Just for a moment. Your wife learns not to ask what the moment is for. Samuel farms the land next to yours, the way he always did, the way his father did and yours did. You can see his house from your field. Some evenings, he walks the fence line that divides your farms. The limp's still there, and the two of you stand on either side of it and say almost nothing. You do not need to. You are the two who came back. Out of all the boys who signed that book in 1861, the two. That is the arithmetic. It does not come out the way you want it to, but it comes out with him still on the other side of the fence. You hold on to that one. Level 9, the veteran, decades later. You are an old man now. It is the turn of the century, a new one. There are fewer of you every year. The men who wore the blue are going gray, then white, then gone. The country you fought to hold together has done something strange with the war. It has turned it into statues. Bronze men on bronze horses in every town square, north and south. Clean and noble, and still. You stand in front of one of them in your town one afternoon, a soldier cast in bronze, charging forever, his face calm. No one's face was ever that calm. Not in the wheat, not on the hill. A boy, maybe 10 years old, sees the small bronze veteran's pin on your coat, the one that marks you as a man who was there. He asks you, "Were you in the war, mister? Was it like that?" And he points up at the statue. You look at the bronze man, then you look at the boy, and you have to decide, in that moment, what to hand down. You do not tell him about the wheat at Antietam, or Burke in the rocks at Gettysburg, or the sound, or the smoke. You say, "I was there. I went because my country was breaking, and I stayed because the men beside me stayed." That is all most of us were, men who stayed beside each other. The boy nods, not really understanding. He will. One day, in some war that has not been named yet, he will. Samuel is gone now. He went first. You stood at the fence line alone that whole last year. When it is your turn, they bury you in the blue, with the small bronze pin. In a field outside your town, the wheat comes up in the spring the way it always has, shoulder high by August, gold and bending in the wind, with no memory at all of what wheat fields once meant. A farm boy walks the edge of it, 18 years old, strong hands. He has never been more than 40 miles from home. He does not know what his country will ask of him. He does not know what he will give, or what it will cost, or who he will carry out of a field, or who will carry him. The wheat does not know either. It just grows and waits, the way it always has. The cycle continues.